So hi, everybody. I'm Mike Rappaport, and as director for the Center for the Study of Constitutional Originalism, I'd like to welcome everyone to San Diego and USD for the 5th annual Hugh and Hazel Darling Foundation Originalism Works in Progress Conference. You know, it's a real pleasure to see how this conference has grown over time. In particular, the willingness of so many scholars who are not presenting papers or commenting to travel to the conference largely on their own dime is really quite gratifying. It suggests that the conference has come to be something of an important event within academic originalism. And it also suggests that the conference can help to sort of nurture a community of scholars within the area, including originalists, fellow travelers, critics, who can keep the conversation and the progress ongoing. I think the success of the conference is no doubt a reflection of the success of originalism as an academic area. Originalism continues to grow, showing all the indicia of a prospering academic field. Every year, it produces a large number of articles, and now there are a growing number of books on originalism that have recently been published or are scheduled for publication, such as those by Jack Balkin, Frank Cross, Kurt Lash, Sai Prakash, Justice Scalia, and Brian Garner, and my own work with John McGinnis. And of course, there tend to be symposia on these works, with the numerous symposia on Jack's book alone constituting its own mini-field. The subject of originalism also continues to attract scholars, including younger ones who are developing new theories. Stephen Sax's piece for the conference, offering a new theory of originalism, I think is a significant example of this. You know, that new theories are regularly being proposed means, of course, that there may be a large number of different theories out there. And while some have argued that this is a problem for originalism, the aspect of originalism that it seeks to impose constraint on judges, which it might or might not be, it is a sign of success in an academic field, showing interest, new ideas, progress. Another characteristic of a growing field is that it spreads into new areas. And this has also been true of originalism. Originalism has become of interest not merely to constitutional law professors, but also to scholars in the area of criminal law, criminal procedure, and scholars from other disciplines, such as philosophers and historians, have become increasingly interested in the subject, even if in some cases only to criticize originalism. One area that I want to highlight is the growth of originalism in comparative constitutional law. Obviously, we have a paper on this subject by Yvonne Tu, but last year's conference also included 2 papers on the subject. And I've noticed, even though it's certainly not my area, a significant debate on the subject about whether originalism is and should be an American phenomenon, with different positions being defended by Jack Balkin and Jamal Green and Lael Weiss and others, including, of course, Yvonne. Finally, one of the nice things about the conference is that it gives us a real window into areas where originalist scholarship is being produced. This year's papers are generally in accord with the results of previous years. So there's significant, and there continues to be significant interest in the 14th Amendment, with 2.5 papers on that subject, the half coming from the half of Elia Soman's paper that deals with the 14th Amendment. There's a strong focus on theory, with 2 papers in that area. And there's a continuing interest in comparative originalism with 1 paper, and in the original Constitution with 1 paper. On the Bill of Rights, however, there's only half of a paper, the remaining half from Elia. And what struck me last year and continues to strike me is the lack of submissions on the Bill of Rights. In the 5 years of this conference, including this one, there have been 36 papers given, with only 2 half papers on the Bill of Rights. Elia's and Will Bode's paper from last year, which was half on incidental powers and half on the Takings Clause. This relative scarcity of papers is a bit surprising since there's been significant originalist work on the bill during this period, including by several people in this room. Still, my sense is that the original meaning of the Bill of Rights is something of an underwritten area. Let me now turn to this year's conference. Putting together a conference of this sort involves a great deal of work, and so I want to thank various people. First and foremost, I want to thank Mike Ramsey. Mike planned this conference from the beginning, doing an enormous amount of work at every stage. I also want to thank Steve Smith, who also put in a significant amount of work on the conference. Thanks also go to Dean Stephen Ferrulo for his support for both the conference and the center. In addition, I want to recognize and thank Trang Pham and Tara Murphy for all of their hard work in organizing the conference, and also my research assistants, Matthew Lopes and Drew Roselle. And finally, I want to thank Rick Stack and the Hugh and Hazel Darling Foundation for their generous support. Their 5-year grant to the center has made possible the continuation of this conference, as well as a host of other activities that the Originalism Center runs. All right, well, now let me say a few words about administrative matters concerning the conference. The papers will, as in previous years, work as follows. First, the paper presenter will have approximately 10 minutes to summarize their paper. The commentator will then have approximately 10 minutes to give their comments, and the presenter will then have the option to respond for 2 or 3 minutes. We'll then open it up for discussion with a cue kept by the moderator. Now, to avoid the situation where the paper presenter responds to every comment made by the participants, the discussion is generally going to follow a rule of 3. The moderator will allow 3 persons to speak, and then will give the presenter and the commentator an opportunity to respond if they wish. Presenters really should not feel the obligation to respond to every question. It's a conversation, not a defense. The moderator, however, will have at their discretion the ability to depart from this arrangement, not for the paper presenter or the commentator, who will have plenty of opportunities to respond, but to allow one of the conference participants to interject or respond if someone has raised the point concerning their view. Right? But let's not create more than a couple of these departures per session. Finally, I want to mention that unfortunately Dick Fallon was unable to make it due to a health emergency involving his elderly mother. But Dick has sent his comments in written form, which will be read by Larry Alexander. So with those announcements completed, I thought we might start the conference by having everyone introduce themselves along with their affiliation. I'm Mike Rappaport from the University of San Diego.
Marty Klaus, University of San Diego. Jack Balkin, Yale Law School.
Ilya Sonin, George Mason University.
Sam Rickless, Philosophy, UCSD.
Yvonne Chu, Columbia University.
Michael McConnell, Stanford.
Bradley Miller, Western Ontario.
Mitch Berman, Texas.
William Bode, the University of Chicago.
John Stanford, University of Florida.
Tom Colby, George Washington University.
Stephen Sachs, Duke.
Chris Green, Ole Miss.
Romuald Rutgers.
Kurt Lash, University of Illinois.
Randy Barnett, Georgetown.
Larry Solom, Georgetown.
John Harrison, Virginia.
Christopher Yu, Penn.
Zach Price, UC Hastings.
Judd Campbell, I work at the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford.
Shakira Sanders, University of Idaho.
Elon Werman, Law Clerk on the Fifth Circuit.
Mila Sahoni, University of San Diego.
John Ollendorf, Georgetown.
Richard Izquierdo, Georgetown.
Mike Ramsey, San Diego.
David Upham, University of Dallas.
Margon Schwarzschild, University of San Diego.
Steve Smith from San Diego.
John Drips, USD Law.
Jack Rako from Stanford.
Larry Alexander, University of San Diego.